Hey everyone, Kryn Cricket here, doing weekly end of Gwent guides chosen by the community, which is you. And this week you want to see a more uncommon monster deck, so we're looking at an Arachas Swarm deck with a very unique win condition. We'll look at the deck and the cards, then how to approach the Mulligan, our gameplay plan, how to tackle each matchup, and then we look at some example gameplay. Tell me down in the comments below which deck you want to see next week, and subscribe if you like what I'm doing. And then let's start. The deck has two phases and we need different cards for each phase. Phase 1, which ideally fills our round 1, is all about thinning our deck of cards we don't want to have in round 3 and to get a big chunk of points onto the board. Cards we want to get out of the deck are Harpies and Arachas Drones. Harpies jump from the deck onto the battlefield as soon as we destroy a beast, and playing one Arachas Drone summons all remaining Arachas Drones. You don't need to play a drone from hand, you can also play an Arachas Behemoth, which summons one Arachas Drone every time you consume a unit, therefore pulling the other ones out of the deck for a big point burst. To pull Harpies, you can play Kaleno Harpies, which spawn 2 eggs which then generate a 1-point beast token when destroyed. Consuming those tokens with your Arachas Queen or your Forktails will trigger the Harpies in your deck. Arachas Queen lets you consume 3 units and Forktail 2, but Arachas Queen has the added benefit of being immune to targeted spells. The eggs spawned by Kaleno Harpies are valuable as well, because if you consume them with another unit, they will add 4 extra points to the unit in addition to spawning the level 1 power beast token. Phase 3 is our endgame and is best played in a freshly started round 3. In this phase you want to get as many 1-point units onto the board as possible, and following cards will help you with that. Drog resurrects up to 8 units from your graveyard and turns them into doomed 1-point tokens without any ability. Ifrit spawns 3 1-power tokens and deals 3 times 1 damage onto random enemy targets, and Jermaine spawns 4 1-power token cows. After putting a lot of 1-point units onto the board, we utilize Triss Butterflies, which buffs up all the lowest friendly units by 1. With Drog alone this gives us 8 points per round, but the more units we provided before, the more points it will rain each round. However, enemies will try to disturb this by either trying to kill Triss or by damaging one of our units, so Triss will not buff the big crowd and only the small unit. So our second point bomb is Yennefer, which we use as a finisher or as soon as Triss Butterfly does not find value anymore. Yennefer lets you choose between buffing up all units by 2 or by damaging all units by 2. At this point we should have more units on the board than our enemy, just think of Drog, so Yennefer will buff more units on our side, resulting in quite some points for us. Then we have some flex cards, which can be played in any phase. Frightener is always good to have to counter spy the enemy, and Elsa's Double Cross gives us access to Frightener or Jermaine, enabling us to more consistently play our combos. Monster Nest gives us access to another Arachas Behemoth, which often comes useful since the enemy's removal will be focused onto them. But Monster Nest into Babagazi comes handy as well if you're missing Forktails or you want to prevent an enemy from dry pressing in round 2. Ruihin is a very underrated card, which strengthens all insectoids and cursed units onto the board, hand and deck by 1. You can either play him in round 1 after you swarm the boards with Arachas Drones created by your Behemoths, so Ruin will strengthen half of your board. Or you play him in round 2 to buff up the tokens generated by Drog, making him a 16-point play as well. Last but not least, Royal Decree lets you access your main combo cards, adding more consistency to the deck. Let's talk about the Mulligan, which is a bit trickier with this deck. Cards you want to keep for round 1 are Arachas Behemoth, Kaleno Harpies, 2 Forktails, Monster Nest, Yennefer and Royal Decree. Depending on your hand, you also want to hold on to Triss and Drog, so you don't need to draw them later, but most importantly, you want cards to get Harpies and Drones out of your deck. Talking of which, cards you want to get rid of are all your Harpies and all your Arachas Drones, except when you have no access to Arachas Behemoths or you know that no one will survive at least 1 round. Then you can keep 1 drone to at least summon the rest out of your deck, but this is merely to prevent further damage and should not be your desired gameplay. Depending on the amount of enemy removal, you need to adapt the Mulligan, but let's talk about that in the matchup section. For now, let's look over our general game plan. Depending on our starting hand, we want to play each unit multiple times. The order would be Kaleno Harpies, Arachas Behemoths, Arachas Queen and then the Forktails. The idea is put something consumable on the board so we can start with that immediately in the case our Behemoths are at the risk of dying. As soon as Behemoths and Harpies are set up, we consume as many beasts and eggs as possible with Arachas Queen and Forktails to trigger the abilities of our behemoths. By eating the beast token spawned by the Harpy eggs, we also get the remaining Harpies out of our deck, resulting in a significant point spike, often pushing the enemy out of the round. On red coin, I like to keep playing in the round, getting rid of cards that would be suboptimal for the Triss Butterfly push, like Forktail, when there won't be much to consume in round 3. Cards like Ruining help you to stay ahead here. Some tips for round 1. If you are missing Kalena Harpies, you could always resort back to playing Jermaine and using Arachas Queen to pull out all the Harpies. Don't be afraid to play Arachas Behemoths into removal, because every Alsa's Thunder played on Behemoth is one less Alsa's Thunder played on your Triss. Always ensure to play round 1 and to get units into your graveyard, or your Drog will be useless in round 3. In round 3, we start off with Drog and all the token generators like Jermaine, Ifrit, but also Kalena Harpies if you still have them. Then we drop Triss Butterflies and use Forktail to consume units the enemy has damaged, so Triss can continue to buff as many units as possible. The last card we want to play is Yennefer into the Buffing Unicorn, because by putting the 1-power Unicorn onto the board, Triss will continue to buff only that unit instead of our big swarm. But that's okay, because either the enemy hasn't dealt with Triss and we are quite ahead, or the enemy has already dealt with her and therefore Yennefer won't break anything. However, each matchup needs to be approached differently, so let's start. Greatswords. Neither they nor we have many options to interfere with the other side of the board except Coral and Muzzle. Generate one Behemoth with Monster Nest to get it out of the muzzle range, and ensure that it can summon the drones from the deck. After that, we ignore them entirely and try to set up a good value push with 2 Behemoths so we can pass after that. At this point, they will just have finished their Greatsword setup and their score won't be too high, so we may get an additional card out of them, but most importantly, they need to do the setup once again. They want to play in round 2, which is where we will need to utilize cards like Jermaine and Triss Butterfly to already keep up. Important is to keep a good finisher from 3 like Drog and Yennefer to counter their big resurrected Greatsword. Veterans. If they don't play the Morkvark variant, then they can safely play round 1 like mentioned above. In the case they do, that you won't gain much from winning round 1 because Morkvark will prevent you from dry passing and they have reasonable access to Spy with Heim or Skjal. In the current meta, I'd not risk it and just dry pass and then outtempo them in round 2, which they'll play to set up their graveyard. They may have a perfect hand and dry pass into round 3, which denies us the use of Drog. Therefore we need to focus on Yennefer, Ruin and swarming the board with Arachas drones. In this case, beware in the round 2 and 3 Mulligan, because you may run into Harpies and drones there. Axeman. Put your Harpies into different rows, so Skelliger Storm doesn't get rid of the eggs that easily. Triss Butterfly won't find much use here, since the weather and ships can stagger our units, so better get rid of it. Push them in round 1 and keep Yennefer and Drog for a decent round 3 finisher. Deathwish. They can use their Cyclops to kill your Behemoths, so try to trigger one early before they play units big enough for Cyclops. You don't want your drones in your deck. Other than that, the game is relatively straightforward and there are not many surprises that can ruin your day. Moonlight. This matchup is a bit troublesome because their Blood Moon can get rid of all our small 1-point units. Therefore try to get as much Moonlight out of them as possible in round 1, while keeping Jermaine and Ifrit for round 3. Start off round 3 with those cards on different rows, and then play Drog into the last empty row. Since they have only 4 Moonlights available, and some need to be used in round 1 and on their side of the board to trigger werewolves and such, you should be okay. Nekkers. As always, push them in round 1 and utilize Yennefer to secure the round, because you will have a full board while they will only have a few units on the board. Controlling round 2 is critical here, where we'll bleed them off the win conditions to then secure round 3 with Drog into Triss. Except for Mandrake, they don't really have much to interfere with our side of the board, so get all the Arachas Behemoths out. Square Tails Shoot. With the changed War Dancer, we don't need to be afraid of winning round 1 anymore, so stick to our gameplay and push round 1. Keep a Forktail on hand in case they play Double on a Bomber, and eat the bomb to prevent a significant point loss on your full board. Square Tail Hand Buff. Get Behemoths out and trigger them ASAP, because as soon as Swordmasters are buffed, they can get rid of them. Other than that, try to push round 1 and utilize Yennefer instead of Triss, because Triss is an easy target for the Swordmasters. Nilfgaard Hand Buff. They need some time to set up, which is your chance to establish Behemoths and get your swarm going. play round 1 and utilize Yennefer, Ruin to keep up with the big units, and try to get control of round 2 to force them to play the hand buffed unit for a smooth round 3. Even if you can't get it out of them, the more cards you draw out of them in round 2, the better for you. Also, after Leo Bonhart, Triss should be a safe play in round 3. Alchemy. Viper Witches suck to play against. If you're not able to play at least 3 Behemoths, maybe 1 from Monster Nest, then consider keeping an Arachas Swarm to get them out of the deck and improve your later rounds through that. Yennefer is a better choice to keep than Triss, but you may consider Triss in a round where all witches are already on the board. She won't hit for top value, but it's better than nothing. That's probably the worst matchup for this deck. Spies. Play around 1 until you play their big point push and you've seen some of their engines, preferable all of their enforcers. Since they want to play long rounds, you can safely pass to deny them further engine value on their side and to play a semi-long round 3. They will try pass round 2 to at least get some value from the Imperial units in round 3. Finish round 3 as usual, but in addition, try to get some more Arachas drones onto the board. Redowit. Redowit wants to lock 2 of your Behemoths, so only play 1 and start consuming ASAP to get drones out and tempt them to lock only 1 Behemoth. After that, play the remaining ones. If they don't lock the single Behemoth, then play the next Behemoths after the counter of the first one is at 1 or 0, and then get the Swarm going and overpower them in round 1, but pass if there are too many engines on their side. Yennefer is your sorceress of choice in this matchup because Triss can be locked, and often they play reinforced trebuchets, further messing with your Triss's ability. Okay then, let's head into an example match.
Patience is not a virtue I am
Emir
known
again.
to have.
A lot of hand buffs out here currently. Strange. Don't think the deck is that good, but hey. I mean, it's definitely okay, but it's like not tier 1. I mean, this is not tier 1 either, but okay. So let's see. With blacklisted drones, we can also blacklist this one, we don't need it. Now the Mulligan is risky because we can always run into Harpies. We have 2 of them. I would like to have more Behemoths. This gives me Germain, which is good. I mean, we can get the Harpies out, like, this might be a target by Leo Bonhart. Let's see. Let's start with the Harpy. And when he plays his hand buff unit, we can always try Behemoth. Because then he needs to Leo Bonhart at least this one and not like the 19 point or 18 point, whatever he has. Okay, it's as a spies. That's not bad because now I can actually safely get the Behemoth out. You know what? Let's get the Behemoth out early before he plays like a second Enforcer, and he can like one-shot this in one turn with like a lot of emissaries. I mean, he can still do that if he gets like 3 emissaries now, not a problem. Okay, it's already 2. Ooh, okay. So this will survive 1 round, which is good. Yeah, he needs to hit his own emissaries to like actually use the Decorum Mantis in those, but it's good for me because I can now get the Harpies out. So let's use the Arachas Swarm for that, and let's get this big level spike going. Look at these guys. And Harpies. Ah! 41 points. Nice. Yeah, I guess we pass here. If he plays into this, like, I don't know, why should he? And we got 2 engines out of him, so... And we have like all the stuff we need for a graveyard.
I shall flog them into submission.
I actually would like to play into this. I'll probably play Fred now. On the other hand, now I got 3 emissaries out, like, that's pretty decent. Can he make this in 1 card? If I play... wait, like he always has emissaries here. He can play Brigades, he can make 24 points. Like, he can, not 24 points, but 11 points easily if I play Fred now. But he will dry pass, right? So that's the premise here. You can also play into this and then use stuff like Yennefer or Ruin. Should we play into this? I mean, we can get rid of some cards we don't need later, but we still have like a good Kalina Harpy. That's the question here. I mean, we win as an equal cards otherwise, like, let's take the equal cards, I guess. That's better. And like he needs to let me win on equal cards, or he proves to me that he can make 24 points in a round, so I don't see. I don't see it. And like we have 3 enforcers out, that is optimal, because if he doesn't have access to enforcers, they will have a hard time to stay on my units later. He of course has some cards to deal with it, but hey. Triss, like Butterfly won't survive that long anyway, because of mana and stuff. Oh, this is like optimal, because now I can just... We could dry pass actually, if I want to do that. Question is, do we want to do that? We could get some more engines out of him and then just pass if the burden gets too high. I mean, like, we don't want to have those fork tails, for example. You know what, let's play it around. We're on equal cards anyway, like it doesn't matter to us if we lose, worst case. If we lose the round. But we can get some more cards out of him.
The revolution is inevitable, merely a matter of time.
Let's get some RPX going here. I'm thinking we should play Triss Butterfly here and just push like badass. And then just use Yennefer as a big finisher. I mean, like, since he's playing spies, we get a lot of targets for Yennefer. This will be amazing.
Discipline. That is what you folk lack.
Question is, should we go with Triss now? We could get some more drones with an RS Behemoth. Let's get Behemoth going. There we go. Let's form the board. Maybe I'll keep like the Triss Butterfly draw combo for last round.
As good as dead.
Oh, really? Like he has an assassin in hand. Oh my god. Okay. Well, sure. This gives me Jermaine. I could start with Triss actually. I don't have Drog, but it's still... You know what? Let's get Jermaine going.
Begone! Begone, you devils!
I mean, alone Yennefer is enough actually to really push here. Should I keep Triss or not? That's the question.
Your Majesty, I cast myself.
I mean,
upon
Triss
thy
is the
mercy.
thing. Like, if he runs,
Please
if
wait,
he doesn't
Your
spy
Excellency.
anymore,
I'm falling
then
behind.
he also can stagger Triss. Or we can just eat the Harpy-Eggs and new Harpies will spawn. We should eat the Harpy-Eggs before, I guess. There we go. And 2 small Harpies, there we go. Nice. What to do? I think I just play Yennefer and then go into... But if I don't draw Drog, because I don't have like Roll Decree or Drog in hand, so it's gonna be risky if I actually get it.
The North shall tuck tail and beg for mercy.
Since we don't have any drones, this would be kind of... Okay, he's going for Enforcers. The Triss Butterflies definitely is not what I want to have. He doesn't run Scourge, he runs Eat Me, like, worst case, so to say. So let's split them into 2 rows. I can still Yennefer for tons of points. And I'm controlling the round, right? You know what? I'm going to play Spy after I play Yennefer. Oh, he has... Oh, like, that could be still...
Let us see.
That's actually Cantrella. Well, that's, like, this is not an optimal position to actually play my Yennefer. Yeah, let's do this.
You
Look at
crossed
these
the
guys.
wrong sorceress.
Ah, beautiful. 60 points ahead. And
Quite the menial task.
I could pass then. He needs to catch up, like I will bleed him a ton of points. He needs to get rid of his big stuff, and if his enforcers are still in his deck, that's actually fine for me. Question is just how likely is it that I get what I want. I could like look for another card to frighten, not just for... That's perfect. That is what I want. Let's make him afraid of Igni. So now he needs 2 cards, right? Like, he can't do this in 1 card. Nah. And he needs to spend gold cards to actually do this, so I should be fine. I should be 1 card up, and it should have. And now I have the Drog, Triss Butterfly combos, and I can even buff my Drog, my little Droglings or Droggears with my Ruhin. So that should be good. I think that should work actually. Let's see what he's playing now, and then let's decide. But I think passing is now the best
I
option.
always find a way in.
There we go. Okay. So, there we go. 1 card up. Nice. Perfect. And he's already played Skellen. He played Vilgefortz. Probably has Menno and Igni in hand, I guess.
Erigor.
There we go. 1 card up. Perfect. I mean, he now get rid of all his Imperial units, right? Like, 3... No, there's still 1 Enforcer in the deck. If he draws that, it won't give him a lot of value. I need to be careful with the Mulligan now, so I don't draw into Drog. That's exactly what I'm talking about. But I get rid of Triss because this will buff Triss up, so it's not as easily killed. There we go. That's something I really don't need at this point anymore. But hey, if it would be better, what can we do? This is still gonna be an awesome combo.
Highly curious case.
And I don't think he'll
shame
play
I
much
have no
emissaries, so he won't really be able to stagger it a lot.
Space est.
How much emissaries does he actually
Please wait,
still
Your
have?
Excellency. I'm falling behind.
Okay, there's an emissary, an enforcer. But after this, like, the medics. Didn't he play medic before? Are they doomed? They're doomed. There we go. Good. There we go. A lot of little Droggers.
Astral remembers.
I'm so
Iris. Okay.
very afraid.
Sure. So this will be the mana, right? So we can safely play Triss. The idea is the Triss.
I'll do what I
And she'll
can.
buff up the little Droggers 1 by 1. 24 points. There goes oh, he doesn't even use mana for it. Sure. That's good because it's not bad as well. Then we buff up all the little Droggers. There we go. And she buffs it up further. And there we go. We won even 1 card up. We don't even need the Behemoth. Nice. Don't forget to tell me which deck you want to see next week down in the comments below. And here's more Gwent videos for you to watch. There are more Gwent guides over here. And here's some example matches here. Well, there. So enjoy and see you over there.